Jefferson County, Tennessee, is situated between the Holston and French Broad Rivers in eastern Tennessee's agricultural valley. Jefferson County's culture included an early and active abolitionist and anti-slavery movement. There were some 600 anti-slavery society members in 1841. 1 year before the U.S. Civil War, there were 2,103 enslaved individuals held by 347 slaveholders. The enslaved made up about 13.2% of the overall population. That same year, Jefferson County was home to 172 free black individuals. In 1870, there were 2,888 black and mulatto individuals in the county, mostly working in agriculture. 9 years later, a series of tragic events would unfold and test the reach of the legal process in Jefferson County's Western District. On May 30th, 1879, Mrs. Sallie Howell, the wife of Dr. John Howell, was reportedly sexually assaulted by a black male. The crime occurred in their home, located 2 miles away from Strawberry Plains. The suspect was described in the Knoxville Weekly Whig and Chronicle as very black, about 30 years old, 5 feet 10 inches in height, and weighs about 180 pounds. The governor of Tennessee, Albert Smith Marks, offered a reward of first $100 and then $250 for the arrest, prosecution, and conviction of the rapist, while Mr. Howell offered a $100 reward. That article also stated the name of the perpetrator, one Lucian Weaver. Lucian Weaver was born to a Miss Hester Weaver. He was 16 to 18 years of age at the time of the alleged assault. We don't know much about his family, but his mother, Hester, was described as an industrious old colored woman who lived in North Knoxville with another son who was near death. Lucian Weaver was a well-known member of the community. It was reported that many people hired him or worked with him. He had formerly lived in the Midway community and spent time in Morristown. The young Lucian also had a brief career in crime. On January 28, 1879, he was found guilty of grand larceny and was sentenced to 4 years in the penitentiary. That term was not fully served. He was free 4 months later and now accused of a more serious infraction. 2 weeks after the reported assault on Mrs. Howell, at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning, brothers Tom and Dan Foster picked up Lucian Weaver about 3 miles below Knoxville, traveling along the railroad tracks. Upon arrest, Weaver reportedly gave his name as Williams. The Foster brothers brought Weaver to a jail in Knoxville, where he was questioned by several people. One of those people claimed to be his brother-in-law. He eventually acknowledged that he had given a fake name, but he denied the charges brought against him and asserted that he could prove where he was on the day of the incident. The next day, Tom and Dan Foster, Sam Allison, and Tom Arnold took the handcuffed prisoner to Strawberry Plains. Around noon, the party arrived and the prisoner was taken to the Howell residence. Mrs. Howell identified him as the perpetrator and exclaimed, "He is the guilty scoundrel." Lucian continued to deny the claims, stating that she ought not to accuse him of it. After meeting the Howells, the arresting men brought Weaver back to Strawberry Plains, where a considerable crowd had gathered. W.H. Vance, a justice of the peace for Jefferson County, retrieved a warrant for Weaver, and a trial was set for 4 p.m. that same day. The trial began in a makeshift court in the backyard of Milo McBee's store. Judge Vance was joined by prosecuting attorney Colonel John M. Meek. Mr. J. W. Borges acted for the defense. Arthur Caldwell was an officer specifically deputized for the occasion, as no Jefferson County officer was near. As the trial began, Weaver claimed he was not ready, as he had witnesses in Knoxville to serve as his alibi, one of those being a son of Sergeant Thomas Ridge at the National Cemetery. His mother would later confirm her son was with her in Knoxville at the time of the alleged rape. Defense attorney Burgess ignored his client and announced he would waive the preliminary examination. Then, a mistime was prepared to commit Weaver to the Dandridge jail. He would remain until further proceedings were planned. Around 50 people, mostly boys, had gathered outside. It was evident there was disposition among some for vigilante justice. Leading the feelings of contempt were the Stipes men, the brothers of Mrs. Howell, as well as Cam Gillette, a black employee of Mr. Howell. Prosecutor Meek counseled those in attendance not to act out and to allow law and order to prevail, stating, "Although the provocation is great, it would be far better to let justice be obtained by law." Still, some, allegedly after indulging in liquor, continued their noisy demonstrations. Weaver, shaken up by the feelings of the crowd, was alarmed, but he was assured he would be protected from mob law. As a protective measure, Deputy Caldwell called upon a dozen men to guard Weaver as he was relocated to a vacant house of Tom Douglas. It was proposed that he would stay there until the morning, when Sheriff Webb could retrieve the prisoner for Dandridge. After the sun had set at 9:30 p.m., a group of 15 armed men seized Lucian from the Douglas property. He was then taken half a mile past town on the Sevierville Road. There, he was shot 3 times in the head with a pistol and died. 2 of those shots indicated that he was laying down at the time. According to Milo McBee Jr., those charged with guarding him until morning made no resistance to the mob. Lucian's body was taken to another vacant home where a rough coffin was made. His body was then carried to the edge of town. It was held there per the request of his mother via telegram. Monday afternoon, Lucian's mother arrived in Strawberry Plains on the 4 p.m. train and took charge of his body. He was buried 2 miles from town at the expense of Jefferson County. Reportedly, the colored people were very mad and would not touch Weaver's dead body or allow him to be buried in their ground. It was stated that Lucian's mother took his murder very hard. The next day, an inquest was conducted in which 11 people were interviewed. The finding of the jury read, "After examining a large number of witnesses and diligent inquiry, they were unable to obtain the names of any of the parties who did the shooting. Judge William Vance then ruled that, being no testimony elected in the examination of the witnesses that fixed the guilt upon any one of the killing of Lucian Weaver, I have deemed it of no importance to bar the witnesses to court."
It is in the interest of the community to which we must look. The spirit which prompts infuriated men, in the heat of passion, burning for revenge, to take the law into their own hands, if encouraged, leads directly to anarchy and is destructive of every safeguard placed by the law around the lives and the property of people. It will prove a progressive evil. If it is permitted, at first the guilty might suffer perhaps, but soon public opinion, always uncertain and capricious, will take the place of law, and instead of passing upon the rights of men to enjoy life and property in the cool, deliberate, dispassionate manner in which our courts are supposed to proceed when they are properly conducted, passion and fury will rule, and life will be of little value. Knoxville Daily Chronicle, July 16, 1879.
As with other extrajudicial killings in the region, we'll never know whether Lucian Weaver would have been found guilty of the crime he was accused of. What is certain is that he was denied due process by a group of murderers, and Mrs. Howell was denied justice for the crimes against her.